Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Glad everybody could make it. And so today we're going to go all the way back to January 2010 to a particular Fringe episode that eerily feels like it's actually happening right now. Now, the episode is called What Lies Below. Here it is here. And it's all about a strange virus that infects the offices of an oil executive. Now, the Fringe team then discovers that the virus originated from a deep borehole. Is all this starting to sound familiar? It should, because we just decoded the same exact theme in a Russian film called Super Deep. The same thing, a virus found in a deep borehole deep beneath the earth that is trying to get out to infect humankind. Now, basically, this whole infection thing to me is shaping up to be a metaphor for possession. Infection equals possession. And the episode is full of black goo and people acting strange and so on and so forth. So, of course, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I put together this clip for you so that you guys can see what I found in this particular episode. Now, let me give you the backdrop. This guy enters into these executive offices of an oil company, and he's very, very sick. He passes out, and he starts spewing blood out of his mouth to try to infect everyone inside the office. And this should remind you of something else, because remember, we decoded the Brothers Grimsby. And remember, it was the blood spatter going into people's mouths that infected them. And remember, in that movie, Thump got infected with HIV. Now, it appears to me as though that HIV is a play on words. Hive. And it will have something to do with the hive mind. They're just working on it right now. It's in its clinical trials, and eventually they'll crack the code. And maybe they already have cracked the code, and they need to gradually roll this out. And whatever it is that they're doing is going to create the hive mind through infection. Now, let's play some of this here. What Lies Below, 2010. Now, because this is an oil company, you see the images of these oil rigs all over this place. And this once again goes back to the black goo, the fallen DNA. Now, I made a discovery that I'll share with you at the end of this show that confirms all of this. And it goes back to ancient Egypt. And I'll save that for last, because it really will tie all this in together to show you that there is something to this black goo, this DNA, ancient organisms and things like that. Let's keep watching here.
Detective, I'm Agent Dunham. This is Peter Bishop.
Now, we've seen these oil rigs before, the single oil rig in I, Pet Goat 2, haven't we?
All he said was it was from a recent reserve find.
It's possible that Vandenkamp came in contact with the virus there, so do you know which oil reserve?
In
the briefcase, we found a drill core sample from an exploratory oil dig.
And right there on the borehole, you see the black goo, the infective agent. It's all there, you guys. So at this point, they quarantine the entire office staff. But one by one, they start coming down with the sickness, and they don't know what it is. They're trying to see if it's airborne or not. And they figure out that it's not airborne. Now, for those of you that have watched this show, this TV show Fringe, you'll remember that they have these cryptic images between the scenes at the commercial breaks. Well, another one pops up that also ties into iPet Go 2.
This is our virus. This sample was stolen from Solum Oil Corp.
Do those documents indicate how far down it came from?
Came from 10 miles down.
A Dutch license.
Rajan Vandenkamp.
Will we be able to leave soon?
Okay, let us know.
Not yet, I'm afraid.
Do we know what happened to him yet?
That's what we're trying to figure out, but we'll let you know as soon as you can leave.
We have a contagion on our hands. This building must be quarantined immediately. No one goes in or out.
Why are the police holding us here?
We think we're in the midst of a virus contamination. The Centers for Disease Control are here.
Are you saying we're quarantined?
For now, yes.
So there is the Daisy with the grayed out petal. Now, I looked into the occult meanings of this daisy with a missing or grayed out petal. And there are several different things, but it's kind of obscure. Like, they don't really nail it down. Well, there's some ancient myth that after a person died, God would sprinkle daisies to cheer people up after the death. That's one myth. But then it's also a love spell, a love ritual. And this is what the occult people call it. They call it a love ritual or a spell when you're picking daisies and picking the petals off and saying, she loves me not. So there's a lot to this, but for the most part, people can agree that this means a lost love or an altered love in this case, because it's been infected by the black goo. This is why in this case it's grayed out. But regardless, the daisy represents death. In this case, a half-death. Now, I thought I heard him say that the name of the company that they stole this organism from had the word S-O-L in it, or soul, which means sun. And of course, you have what appears to be a sun there as well. Let's keep watching because I'm going to show you where this daisy that's missing petals shows up in iPet Go 2 from 2012. After this episode aired. Now, of course, you saw the fireworks back there, which is another aspect that appeared in another film called The Brothers Grimsby that we just decoded a couple weeks ago. And in that film, the disease was actually hidden inside of the fireworks. And we surmised that this was just a play on words, that it was all about booster, because boosters are rockets, aren't they? And that this is what they were hiding. And this is what the true meaning of the fireworks means in this iPet Go 2 scene. Let's keep watching.
The rabies virus can't survive in water, so it inflicts its host with a paralyzing fear of water.
So, at this point, once the people get infected, the virus takes over the host psychologically. And what it does is it causes people to act in a hive type of manner, and it also causes them to try to take over other people and infect other people. In other words, the virus actually possesses the person and tries to get them to breach the containment area.
No, viruses are not people, Astrid, but they seem to have minds of their own. They deny our definitions of living and dead. The more we learn about viruses, the more unbelievable they become. Their only function seems to be to survive, to replicate, and they use us as a vehicle to do so.
Strain won't isolate. The sample was too fragile.
Damn it. I was afraid of that.
She's out. There are receptionist.
Swab.
Now, of course, in this scene, they do this test to see if the people are infected. So they swab their nose. And what color does a positive test come back as? It comes back as black. Just like the oil, just like the black goo.
Please swab the inside of your cheek.
How will I know?
If you're infected, the solution will turn black.
I'm infected?
I'm afraid so.
That was level 4.
And of course, all this jumped off under the president born in 46, Thump himself, and you're going to hear him say 4 and 6.
So,
That was level 4. This is classified as 6. Right now, it's the only option. That was level 4. This is classified as 6. Right now, it's the only option.
And of course, this episode wouldn't be complete without a Han Jopkins death map.
This is 2 weeks from now. We have no symptom blocker, no cure. What solution do you propose, Agent Dunham?
total 37.
So, then of course, they have to mention the 237, which we've decoded many, many times. 237 is the beast. In this case, he's describing 237 people that died on a boat from scurvy. 18 survived. Well, 18 surviving is 6 and 6 and 6, the beast. And if you subtract the 18 that died from 237, you get 219.
Magellan set sail around the world with a crew of 237 people.
Nearly all of whom died.
Yeah, but 18 of them didn't. Despite the odds, 18 of them came back to their families.
Mount Toba, the biggest volcanic eruption for the last 25 million years.
So, Dr. Bishop finally figures out the cure, and it's all based on sulfur. Now, we were just talking about sulfur, weren't we? And how the world climate community waited until 2020 to finally put limits on the sulfur content inside of bunker fuel. Why now all of a sudden? They've been talking about climate for 3 decades or longer, and now all of a sudden they're finally starting to get rid of the sulfur content inside of the bunker fuel. Is this because sulfur will somehow work against their grand plan? Well, I don't know that. I do know sulfur is very harmful to your health. It causes asthma and a lot of other things. But you got to ask yourself, sulfur becomes the cure in this episode against this virus.
Ash. Sulfur. Sulfur. That could be blocked out the sun. Sulfuric ash rained down all around the world.
That glass isn't going to hold much longer.
So, the infected are the only ones left in the building. They evacuate everybody who tested negative, and the pathogen causes those left inside the building to go nuts. So Broyles comes up with this idea of dosing them with fentanyl gas to put them to sleep. Now understand that 12 years ago when this aired, there was no fentanyl drug problem. I mean, they had the patch at that time, and I remember this because 12 years ago, I was still working in the pharmaceutical industry, and one of our competitors was the fentanyl patch because we sold morphine. And so fentanyl was in a patch, and there was just at the very beginnings, I mean, I guess there was some abuse going on of the fentanyl. People would cut it and put it in water and try to get the fentanyl out of it. But because of the vehicle of, how it was packaged in that patch, it was very hard to abuse it because there was all these byproducts in the patch. It could make you very sick. So this is weird. It's almost like a foreshadowing of what's to come now, which now you barely touch this stuff and then people are going to the hospital. So this is very strange to me that they talk about this here. Let's listen.
What if we could buy you some time? What are you thinking? Fentanyl gas. Pump it inside the building. Knock them out long enough to synthesize a cure. taken several hours to synthesize the antidote. I'm sorry, Agent Dunham, we just don't have that long.
So they dose everybody, it knocks them out, and then they come in and administer the sulfur injection. This is just so weird. Now, for those of you that watch this series, if there are any other episodes of this that you think might fit into what we've been talking about on this channel, just let me know. Send a comment to me in the comment section and just put the name of the episode and I can look it up and go over it. But this is just very, very strange. Now, I'm sure there's a lot more disclosures going on throughout this series, and we'll get into those as well. But now it appears as though there are many more clues that are surfacing about the origins of this black goo. Now, some of it is connected to ancient Egypt, and I'm going to show you that right now. This was the discovery that I made this morning, just doing a little bit of research connecting ancient Egypt to toxic mold. And what happened was these people that had discovered King Tut's tomb in the 1920s, several of them died. This is unbelievable. They died and no one could figure it out. And I'm starting to wonder if it was toxic mold poisoning, as did some of the researchers here. Now, what I think is going on here is that the tomb was booby-trapped. I believe that the ancient Egyptians created some kind of mold bioweapon that contains their DNA that they knew would be released in modern times when the technology was available to find and open their tombs. And this is why they made their tombs so ornate, because it looks like something you want to open, doesn't it? Now, if you think this is out there, think about the concept, the main theme in the Alien franchise films. You had advanced modern travelers discovering very interesting looking things that look like they needed to be opened, only to realize that they've infected the entire human race once they've released these canopic jars in the Alien films. So, what if King Tut's tomb was booby-trapped? And now we are in the days of, like the days of Noah, aren't we? Coming full circle from beginning of history to end of history. Let's read this article because this is very, very interesting about what they think happened to these people. On April 5th, 1923, Herbert died in his room at the Continental Savoy Hotel in Cairo, most likely due to blood poisoning or sepsis after a mosquito bite that was subsequently injured and infected while shaving. It was said that at the time of Earl's death, Cairo suffered a power outage, and his dog Susie, back home in England, howled her last and died. There was also a concurrent issue of Carter's pet canary being swallowed to death by a cobra. Amplifying the drama, creator of Sherlock Holmes and proponent of mysticism and the afterlife, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle proclaimed the curse to be orchestrated by elementals, not souls or spirits, created by Tutankhamun's priests to guard the tomb. It appears to me that a bunch of evil spirits were released that caused all this chaos in these people's lives. And it says here, many experts denied the existence of any such curse. One of the most prominent to do so was Herbert Winlock, a distinguished Egyptologist and director of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. He compiled a list of the people who played a role in the tomb's discovery and opening. And on January 26, 1934, the New York Times interviewed Winlock about it. The 6 people present at the opening of the tomb who did die in the 12 years that had passed, wow, all 6 of them died. He said they were all easily explained by their long histories of poor health. In the late 1990s, some investigators suggested that the workers who took ill and died might have been exposed to toxic strains of Aspergillus niger, a fungus better known as black mold. Now, if this doesn't sound like a booby-trapped bioweapon, I don't know what does. Maybe the ancient Egyptians found a way to combine the black mold with their DNA to bring it forward into the quote-unquote afterlife or the future, time travel, so they could possess whoever they awakened it to. And this is exactly what's happened. So this all seems to be coming full circle based on our research. Now, let's keep reading here, but doctors and medical sleuths have been less interested in death, curse, rumors, and far more fascinated by King Tut's poor health. So, apparently, he had a limping gait, an androgynous appearance, enlarged breasts. Wow. We know who the androgynous one is, don't we? So, this is the information behind this. Now, this posted in the National Geographic as well as, which one is this? PBS NewsHour. This isn't just hearsay. These are real people looking at this stuff. So this fits in perfectly with what we were talking about. Now, one of you actually told me about this, a new Netflix series called Chosen. This just came out like yesterday. And of course, I'll be looking at this, but why are we going to look at this? Well, it's because it's about an extraterrestrial rock that brings about a mold spamdemic, just like everything we've been talking about. So this stuff, we're over the target now, you guys. Because we just started kind of talking about this, didn't we? Over the last 2 or 3 weeks, this mold aspect. And now all of a sudden, it's manifesting in our reality. Now, I hadn't even heard of this Chosen series. There's no Wikipedia page for it. One of you told me that it has an aspect to it about mold. So I'll dig into that and do a montage and report that back to you guys probably next week. Now, we'll be back tomorrow, of course, with a premiere on some of the newest headlines. I know tomorrow is Saturday, but I'm going to do a pre-recorded premiere with some of the newest headlines because there's lots going on once again as they move us towards the next phase of whatever it is these people are up to. Let's go into the chat here for just a little bit. So what fights mold? We need to figure that out. Well, I believe there's a very strong faith component to this. We talked about this in one of our last shows, that this has to do with your belief. Because there's a demonic possession component to all of this. Okay? And so you have to fight that. You have to exorcise those demons from you. I mean, I'm sure there is also a therapeutic cure, but a lot of this is going to come down to faith. The Bible promises us that no weapon shall prosper against God's people. The weapon might be released and it might do a little damage, but it won't prosper against his people. Now, how could have God have said that with such certainty? Well, because a lot of this stuff comes down to faith. You see, the weapons that the enemy wages against us always has to contain a choice. It always has to have a spiritual component to it. And I think God placed these rules on the enemy so that we would have a fighting chance. In other words, your faith has a lot to do with how you resist these tools of the devil, okay? Even when it comes to a bioweapon, there's always a way out, and a lot of it's faith. And this is where you get into being healed by faith. You know, a lot of people say, well, why aren't we seeing miracles of healing in the last days? Well, think about it. Think about all of us who never got the you-know-what and stood our ground and were completely okay. But then you look at other people who went to the hospital and some died. So a lot of this is faith. I know we're always looking for the secret cure. Sometimes it's not about a secret cure. But, you know, do your research on black mold. It's all around us, okay? I did a little research on this. And what it said is this stuff is all around us. It's on every surface. It's in almost all homes. But what happens when it becomes a problem is when your immune system gets so much of this exposure that it becomes very sensitive to it. And this is when it starts doing damage to your body. So you can see how in there is a certain component of faith, because your immune system, much of it is based on faith as well. How much do you believe that you're going to be healthy? Now, of course, there's a scientific component to that as well that they keep beating us over the head with. But it's interesting. They don't tell us how to strengthen our immune systems, do they? You know, the talking heads aren't talking about that, about foods to eat and plenty of rest. That should be at the beginning of every single thing that they say that comes out of their mouth. There should always be a disclaimer in front of everything they say that says this is how you strengthen your immune system. Because honestly, there are a lot of people that just don't know how to do that. They haven't been taught. Because it's not coming through their TV and they're not being told by these top medical experts. The only people telling them to strengthen their immune system are the homeopathic doctors, aren't they? And we know how the medical community looks upon them. So you've got most people not even realizing how to strengthen their immune system. And we're not getting the messaging from the medical authorities. So that's the first thing you want to do if you want to, free yourself of, whatever it is. Now I'm getting into advice that's medical, so I got to be careful here. But you guys all have great ideas in the chat and in the comments section. So let's keep looking at some of your comments here. Now understand that God didn't leave us out to dry. Okay. It's just the knowledge of how to be a healthy person has been lost. It's been intentionally hidden from us. Why? Because think about it. A conflict of interests. Why tell people how to get better on their own when you can make a bunch more money by not telling them? They're lying by omission. How do you think, okay, look at Hollywood, for instance. Believe it or not, these actors, when they're on the movie set, they're working their you-know-what off. These people work 15-hour days. They still look, these are the people that people look up to in terms of, success and what you're supposed to look like and all this. Now, I know that there's the whole acrinodrome component to it, but they've been given the book of health. They've been told what to stay away from. There's probably some book or a manual that they all get when they sign over their life away to the devil. When they sign on the dotted line, they probably get a book or a manual that explains to them exactly how they should get through this life and remain the healthiest. Now, how do I know this? Because some of the most evil people live the longest. Some of the most evil people live into their 90s and hundreds. So how are they doing this? They're taking the back door. And God said, he talked about this in the Bible, about which door you try to get through to get to heaven. And he calls the people that try to take the shortcut, he calls them thieves and robbers. And it's an attempt at a shortcut, but they don't get there, of course. They're not going to get everlasting life, but they can live long lives. And I argue that some of these people have even lived multiple lives, not multiple in terms of reincarnation, but multiple in terms of they basically switch out, but they just hide. And then all of a sudden they pop up in a new generation. And if you look at pictures of people from, 60, 70, 80 years ago, they look exactly like some of the actors that are running around now. And it's shocking. I was doing some research on the actress from, what's her name? I always forget her name. She played the little girl in E.T. Anyway, you look at some of her ancestors, And some of the females in her ancestral bloodline look exactly like her. And I'm like, that is creepy. Like, exactly like her. And I'm like, I wonder if these people like cloned or something out. And then all of a sudden they just reappear in a timeline. And now they can live a whole nother life. It just makes you wonder. And maybe the clone, maybe they figure out a way to transfer consciousness. And so they simply create a clone that's born. Yeah, Drew Barrymore. Thanks, you guys. They simply create a clone that's born, and then they transfer into that new clone, and they can live an entire new life. And basically what I'm describing is demon possession, because the demon just keeps hopping bodies. We know this happens from what the Bible told us. And this is why they worship the devil, because the devil has given them some of these abilities to live through multiple lifetimes. They probably share the host with the demon. So they're part demon and part, human. So they just share. And so they're okay with that. They're like, okay, I'll share my consciousness with this demon. And then I'll clone out when I start looking old. I'll fake my death and I'll just be reborn in the next generation, because it's going to be more fun anyway, because of all the technology and sinfulness. And this is what I think is really happening. Now, of course, once we get through to the other side and all the books are open and all the scrolls, all of this will be explained to us. And I could be right and I could be wrong, but I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. But basically, this is what I believe is happening. And so during their lifetimes, they're able to achieve great things. They're able to run fast and, stay up for days on end without any ill effects to their health. They're able to, and this is because they've been given this manual of health, what to stay away from. And these are the kind of people that would fake, something and tell us they're getting it, and then just to get us to get it when they actually didn't actually get it. Because they're actors, and this is what actors do. It'd be very easy for them to do this. So, these are just some thoughts on some of this stuff. We talk about a glass ceiling, right? I mean, you see these actors and actresses, and all, remember, their sole purpose is to dangle the carrot. So to keep us trying, to keep us going to our job, waiting to be discovered, to keep us buying lottery tickets, to keep us investing in 401ks, thinking we're going to one day be able to be rich and retire, to keep us coming to their movies and to keep their programming going. But when people start from the bottom and try to get into these worlds where they think that they're going to have success and riches and adoration from their peers, many people spend their entire lives chasing after it. Imagine what that does to a person. Trying and trying and trying. You see it all the time. American Idol. You see these people just falling all over these celebrities, wanting so bad to be rich. I was watching this one lady on Who Wants to Be, or American Idol. And they're like, why are you here? They love, their egos love this, the guys that are sitting up there, the judges, they love it. They love how they're worshipped. You can see it in their eyes. I have the power to crush your soul if I want to right now. You could just see it in their eyes. And then you see the people standing up in front of them, just begging them to be considered, to just be acknowledged that they have talent. I mean, what has happened to this world? Where are we at? It just breaks my heart to see people just stabbing themselves all over their body with many pains, the Bible says, seeking riches and seeking to be acknowledged and to be famous. Now, I was having an interesting conversation with my son. He's a very, very smart boy. He's 22, but I still call him my boy because I missed out on some of the years when he was younger due to custody that I was not allowed to have with him. And so now he's an adult and he's woken up completely to all the lies and everything. And he said, I knew that she was lying, Mom or Dad. And I just knew it because everything was a lie. And so now he's with me. And I love this boy. I can't explain to you how much I love him. But anyways, at the end of it, God answered the prayers that I prayed for all those years to be reunited. And those of you that have been on the channel for a long time, you've heard this story from the beginning. So you've been on the journey of what's happened with me and my children. Now, my daughter is still under the spell and she doesn't realize everything yet, but at least we're still in contact and I still love her. And that might be a little bit longer of a process, but at least I have my son. Now, we have been having a lot of discussions lately. And he explained to me that he goes, Dad, this new generation, we don't care about famous people anymore. And I said, really, son? And he's like, yeah. He goes, I don't know why. He goes, but your generation was probably the last generation that cared about celebrity status and all these things and wanting to be a celebrity and all this. And he said, my generation, we don't care. We actually see these people as, I can't say the word, but you know what I mean. He said, we just don't like them. He goes, most of them are ridiculous. And so they're starting to wake up. Now, in his group of friends, not many of them got the Pokemon sticker, but you're not going to see this on the news. In my daughter's group of friends, none of them got the sticker. So this generation in their 20s and early 30s, they're standing up and representing a very large part of the people that are awake. So that was good for me to hear, because when I was growing up, it was completely the opposite. Hollywood had this magic spell over people. It was crazy. Like everybody wanted to be famous. All of my friends had posters on their walls of famous celebrities and cool cars. And everyone just believed what celebrities said. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but back in the 80s and 90s, most of the celebrities stayed out of politics. But it's almost like they've pulled out all the stops, haven't they? Now they're leaning on these celebrities to have to talk about politics. And in doing that, they've alienated most people. People see them for what they are, basically a paid endorsement that's been elevated by the machine to a status so that they can influence other people. So that's what's going on right now. So that was good news for me to hear. Let's go back into the chat here. All right. Our generation was falling away. My daughter's still lost. Her future depends on our grandchildren. Yeah. Now, this is a time where we need to be sober. And I'm going to tell you guys something. Ask yourself why we now live in a world where the controllers have gotten out of the way when it comes to certain things that people are starting to put in their bodies. I'll leave it at that. I don't want to be a downer on people who maybe do this every day, but you guys know what I'm talking about. The green stuff. And you need to ask yourself, why are they just letting us all do this? Why is it so cheap? And why do so many people we know depend on this every single day just to get up and get out of bed? And pray about it. That's all I ask you to do. Pray about it. How can this vice be advantageous to the controllers? And is that why they're letting us just go rampant with it? And it being a mainstream now of our reality? Why is it glorified so much? Why does it grow mold on it if you don't take it off of the branch right away? Just questions, you guys. Just questions. I know for me, I don't ever like to be out of control when it comes to my mental psyche. My limit now is like 3 drinks. I remember when I was younger, and, it'd be a 6-pack was my minimum. Now it's like 2 to 3 drinks. And that's very rarely now, like maybe once every couple months. And even then, that one time I do it, I just don't feel right for a few days. And so it's to the point where, wow, do I really need it at all? And then I think about people who do the green stuff daily, 3 times a day. just to be able to be around people, and the hold that has on people, and how some people are greening out. It's another thing I talked to my son about. He said everybody he knows who has done it daily over a long course of time, 10 years, is constantly nauseous and anxious if they don't get it. What does that tell you? And many of them will green out. They just start vomiting uncontrollably. Now, I can tell you why that I believe that that's happened. There's many theories to it. But what nobody will deny is that it hits the histamine receptor. We all know that. This is why it makes you hungry. And in small doses, it'll make you hungry and you're fine. But for people doing it 3 and 6 times a day, it reverses polarity. And instead of helping with nausea and making you a little bit hungry, now it causes the nausea. And this is what happens in your human body when you flood any receptor with too much. Now, the question is, how does a person go from once a week to 3 times a day? Well, that's the question you need to ask yourself and pray about. Why did I go from once on the weekend or every other weekend just partying with friends to 3 times a day and needing it to not feel anxious? That's the question you need to ask yourself. What is in this that's making me want it more? Now, I would argue that at very, very low levels, which I'm not condemning because drinking's actually worse, but at very, very low levels, you're not going to have any kind of effect where you need it because of anxiety. But what has happened? We've been basically sold a bill of goods. We've been told it's completely safe and there's nothing wrong, and smoke as much of it as you want. Well, when you do that, you then need it to not feel anxious. And everybody knows this is the truth. But why isn't this being talked about? Well, they're never going to do studies on this, are they? They're never going to do studies because studies are paid for by the pharmaceutical industrial complex. And it's only so that they can make more money. But if you were to do an independent study and follow these people, you would see that 90% of them that have done it for years and years and years and need it every single day are developing these symptoms of being nauseous, stomach problems. You know? So I got to be careful when I talk about this stuff because I know a lot of you guys do this. This isn't a judgment. This is because I love you. Okay? And I'm just telling you the experience. And maybe while we're all here together, maybe some of you that have experienced exactly what I'm talking about can vouch for what I'm saying so that it's not just coming from me. Okay? Maybe you can vouch for it and say, yes, I had nausea and had to quit. Or I got really bad anxiety and had to quit because I did it for 10 years. And this is what this platform is for. It's to share our stories so that nothing is ever coming just from one person, you know? So just ask yourself why the controllers are letting everybody do it. Just ask yourself. And now a lot of it has to do with them making tax revenue off of it. Now my daughter, I'll tell you another story here, works at a dispensary. And she's been there for a long time. She enjoys it. And she's the one also having these symptoms with her stomach and severe anxiety. And of course, that breaks my heart, but you can't control people. You know, you just have to love them at where they're at. And so that's what I have been trying to do. I've gotten a lot less judgmental in my old age. I'm not really old, but just with life experience. But also I'm going to call a spade a spade. But it's out of love. Just understand that this is all out of love. So have any of you had issues with nausea, vomiting, greening out, severe anxiety when you don't have it? Let us know here in the chat so we can compare notes. So I'm just going to read down through here. Yeah, it's all taxed and regulated. Oh, that's what I wanted to tell you guys. So my daughter shared some things with me about the dispensary she works at. And basically, she says the feds are in and out of their dispensary like every week. They're not allowed to put this money into any bank. It all has to be cash, which makes them a target for thieves, doesn't it? They're constantly being audited and all of their paperwork is gone through. It's a living nightmare. Now, she enjoys it because she's programmed to enjoy it. But where have we gotten to? Where we now live in a world where the feds run pretty much the dispensaries. What's the world that we've gotten to? Why did we accept that? And why are they just letting us do this? So, all right. Well, I love you guys, and I don't know how we got on that topic, but, some have never. Now, understand that there are people who will admit the truth about their experience with something, and then there are others that will go to the grave even if they are experiencing the symptom, just for the cause of what they believe in. Because they have to defend what they think that they can't live without. Okay? And so understand that it will be skewed in that regard. But a lot of people have experienced this. And you either have to back off of it or you have to stop altogether. Some people become highly allergic to it to where they can't ever touch it again once they quit. So these are just many of the stories that I've heard and witnessed personally. Now, I can tell you, even my friends back in college, the same thing has happened to them. I didn't know too many that have smoked since college, but it takes a long time to have this happen to you, but it does happen. And it's not documented or talked about. And that should tell you anything. It's basically being covered up, okay? Because you would think that this would be a big deal, that they would talk about this, that it would be known, that there would be some kind of acknowledgement of it, but there isn't. And the fact that you're hearing it from my mouth and you're not reading it in any, publications should tell you everything you need to know. Because obviously many, many people in the chat here are admitting that this has happened to them too. So why aren't there any papers on it? Well, it's a cover-up. It's a cover-up. Now, some people also, the argument that this is different kind of green, and I agree with that, but I think also a lot of it has to come with, or a lot of it has to do with the frequency. I remember growing up, and I had when I was younger in my teen years, and most of my friends did it every other weekend or every weekend, or they would alternate drinking this weekend and green the next weekend. But nobody I knew did it 3 times a day when I was a teenager. But now we live in a world where most people who do smoke do it very often, 3 times a day. So it happened to Boru. I saw 3 or 4 or 5 other people, fess up to this. And so we know it's real. So the people that have this has not happened to, you at least have to acknowledge that this is real. Okay? Even if it hasn't happened to you. And you have to also acknowledge that it could happen to you at some point if you keep on the course that you're at. So I love each and every one of you guys. And hopefully you understand that I'm talking to you about these things with love. And I'll see you guys tomorrow with these headlines. Okay? Have a great rest of your day and a great weekend, everybody. Take care and be safe.